One of the biggest challenges that you'll hear from most authors is the concept of protagonists and deuteragonists. Basically, who's delegated into the spotlight and who's playing support. When it comes to storytelling, your main cast is your main voice. They're the ones that drive the development of the plot forward as active pieces, and they're the instruments for change and growth the most because the camera is almost always on them. Your main cast can have a main character, but they should also be complemented by well-defined support characters that give them more avenues to feel, grow, change, and challenge. The problem starts becoming the actual quality of the cast. Some authors try to expand the main cast further into different characters of varying levels of importance, but accidentally underdevelop the actual group dynamic because there's too many characters and not enough screen time. So, what's the balance? Well, today I want to show you a series that, despite its simple aesthetic, is actually one of the shows that I'd argue elevated the fundamentals of writing a large main cast, and what we can learn from how they handled a 5-man ensemble. Alan Becker's stick figure universe parades a colorful, literally, cast of characters that each have their own personality, quirks, and well-defined relationships within the group that make them feel solid. It's not just a show about fighting, but it's also a show about friendship and camaraderie through thick and thin. In Animator vs. Animation 4, we're met with blue, green, yellow, red, and orange, or the second coming. And their friendship isn't just instantaneous, but it's also the highlight appeal of the sister series Animation vs. Minecraft, where they go on wacky Minecraft-themed adventures or traumas. There are 4 main key takeaways that I have for this series that I think every author deciding to do a large main cast should do. And these are motivation, individuality, interconnectivity, and spotlight delegation. So let's begin. What is a main cast anyway? It's not really easy to define what the term main cast is actually, because some people would argue that there's no such thing as a main cast, interestingly enough. The argument for this one is that there's only one main character and their supporting casts. But I disagree. I think this depends on the story you're trying to make. Steven Universe is an example of a show that heavily relies on the main character being the anchor. Narratively, Steven is the most important part of the audience's lens, and the crystal gems were made to assist him, which locks the story's point of view on him. But we still have episodes focused on the deeper conflicts and emotions of the characters around him. Conversely, Avatar: The Last Airbender's lens shifts between its characters despite Aang being the namesake of the show. So, what takeaways can we get from Alan Becker's universe? Let's begin with number 1, motivation. I cannot stress how important this point is because each character needs to have an individual reason and role within the group, or else they're going to feel like fodder. This is also the core reason why they stick together even when they've proven to be capable alone. In Alan Becker's universe, this fundamental is established early. When Orange sees the browser where the other 4 are, we're immediately shown what brings them together. The other 4 were literally made to fight. They're a browser game, and someone intentionally created them as a group. Orange joins because he saw how cool they were in fighting and wanted to get in on the action. And in turn, they welcome him because he essentially just challenged their perception of reality by showing them the greater PC. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. But another angle to this is the proportion of their personality to the actual motivation. The common denominator for all of them to stick together is because they like fighting, discovery, and adventure. Some would argue the simplicity being uncompelling, but that's not completely accurate. Your group's motivation must be proportional to the individual character's actual personality, which in this case are them just being nice and chill people. They're naturally accommodating, something that's consistent over the episodes when they're meeting other entities. Being nice and somewhat naive is just their default. If you haven't harmed me, I have no reason to start swinging. But let it be known that they can start swinging. But it's important to understand that not all characters are like this, and that's the point. Some characters need a stronger reason to socialize while others don't. If you have a stoic character suddenly want to be buddy-buddy with others but are actively shown to be hostile, you would need a stronger reason for them to stick in a group. In the same universe, Alan Becker uses a character named Victim, or Hacker in this case, to show a contrast. This is a character who has been through so many years of abuse and just went through the loss of losing his lover and years of hard work they put together to be happy. Of course, he would show resistance in some way when someone comes in and offers quote-unquote help. And the reason presented is very tantalizing. The prospect of resurrection, something so extraordinary. A character racked by grief clutching onto extremes blindly is an essential part of his character. Of course, different media means different reception patterns, and most of the time, it's influenced by a lot more environmental contexts. That delicate balance is up to you, as an author, to flesh out. Because another fundamental reason in this category is that your group motivation needs to be proportional to the stakes involved in your story. Let's go to Season 3. Here we have two antagonists, Purple and King Orange. They serve as your main adversaries during the season and are actively hostile towards the group, which includes lying and imprisonment. But this season starts with the Color Gang being perpetually trapped by Purple in an infinite parkour maze, where they break free and are separated. We have a scene here where King Orange quote-unquote helps Yellow and Blue. Yellow sees the power of the command block and wants to follow King Orange, while Blue is much more reluctant. Yellow here is attracted to the idea of something familiar, which is the command blocks. Power, in this case, is now a form of a safety net in a time when they're all separated. King Orange also technically helped them as a way to lure them in, and Yellow, having the personality of someone that's naturally curious, accepts the invitation. However, Blue is reluctant because he's seen what power can do to people. He's polite but needs a stronger reason to trust, which is the power of addiction, unfortunately. The point to take away here is that the group motivation isn't just to stick together anymore, it's to survive and stay safe. When your group dynamic is challenged with actual danger, you need to adjust accordingly. Red and Orange start fighting because Orange blames Red for his careless nature of dragging them into this mess in the first place, while Red argues that they just wanted to have fun and it's not really his fault that they were lied to. This culminates into an entire fistfight. Conversely, Green is the one to confront Purple, and despite his caring nature towards others, Purple not offering an actual apology despite trapping them is met with several threats of a fist to the face. It's only when Green sees Purple betrayed and no longer actively against them that he goes back to his caring nature and chases him down to confront him on why he did what he did. Grounding the motivation well can also help you perpetuate the themes of what you want your main cast to represent. A lot of character growth and morality checks happen because characters are allowed to bounce off of each other's criteria of good and bad. The stronger the motivation to stick together as a group, the more that they have rooms for nuanced themes because there's never a threat of them just going, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore and I'm leaving." This forces them to talk about a situation because they want to stick in the group. Alan Becker uses the main cast to represent different themes of ego and pride overshadowing community, and the importance of sacrificing yourself for others. Or even just a simple lesson of wonder and camaraderie, and not everything is kind of fun when you have people to hang out with. All in all, this point shows us that group motivation needs to be fluid, but within defined parameters. Your core root questions are, why are they together? And is this enough of a reason to stick together? But here's another blockage that writers face. Who is this character outside of the group dynamic? Which brings us to the next fundamental, individuality. Each of the characters must exist separate of the group as their own individual character. Alan Becker's style of storytelling presentation gives a good balance of two concepts. First, show moments of that character being their own person with individualized interests. They stand together as a unit, but they stand out as an individual. Orange is an all-rounder, slightly relaxed and passive guy that you can rely on as a safety net. Green is the more active emotional and physical support. He's the active support that's there present in the situation, or sometimes he acts as a foil or as a friend to the shenanigans of others. Red's role is the one friend who gets strung along with the mischief and is sometimes the metaphorical or literal punching bag of the group. Sometimes he's the one that causes the mischief. Yellow's the chaos-induced erudite that is technical but curious. Blue's the emotional anchor who tries his best to keep his cool during crazy moments but fails horribly, but you can rely on him during moments of higher emotional stress to get a more unstable but exciting narrative. The last thing you want is for a character to just feel like an accessory to someone else, or worse, take up unnecessary space. Remember, these are main cast members. A main character who's only defined by their connection to someone else and isn't given the opportunities to shine on their own can feel like dead weight. And yes, while that can be a great character flaw, it needs to be treated like a character flaw. or else that's just bad writing. Alan Becker does this well by balancing different kinds of episodes. One is where only one character is in the spotlight and they discover a fundamental aspect of Minecraft connected to their interests. Another type is when they're put all together to face a common threat. This is where the group roles shine the brightest, and we see how they would actively help or hinder the progress of the group. The point of this half is that your characters need to feel like their own person first so that the audience has a reason to be invested in the relationships they build. But second, and this is the most important part, how does being in the group change their core personalities? This is the same principle as how humans move. When you're alone, you can be a bit messy or slow thinking because you're essentially isolated from the world. But when you're with others, you clean up more and create witty banter. Characters also need to have those separations. Let's use Blue as an example. As a character, Blue is a relatively chill person with bouts of emotional outbursts when stressed. His character is relatively easygoing, but when he's in a group dynamic, his role starts shifting in response to the others. He's open to being reckless when the environment is safe, but he can become emotionally distressed when the others are highly threatened. These emotions can border on absolute worry, actively inhibiting the others from putting themselves in higher danger, or straight up grief when he thinks he lost them. Another example of this is Red. When Red's in the group dynamic, he's careless and rowdier, brought by the emotional safety net of hanging out with your friends, or wanting to go on a grand adventure together. He almost acts with the careless bravado of "we can do this if we do it together." Additionally, his judgment when engaging can be clouded by the need to protect his friends, especially when there's an active danger. But when he's alone and in an unfamiliar environment, we see him take on a different approach. He's more tactical and aware of his surroundings, using care to not get murdered and utilizing environmental strategies not just to help others, but also himself. He's not afraid to retreat for the sake of a bigger goal, something that's immediately contrasted by the way that he's so gung-ho when running in to save his friends. Or how about the smart one? Yellow is a character that exudes curiosity and has a knack for discovery, making him self-sufficient to push storylines further. He's also actively reckless when it comes to trying out new things. When he's with other characters, this personality can go two ways. One is that he amplifies the ideas and creativity of other characters, making him a great narrative tool to push certain themes and plots forward. But on the other hand, he's the more stable of the group when it comes to stressful situations that need rationalization. Characters reacting to external stimuli make for good character building because it puts them in new social problems that could enhance or challenge their preconceived notions about the world. The next point I want to make are the branches of the tree, and this is important as your series develops. Interconnectivity. To feel complete, the characters must have a dynamic within the group that strengthen their bonds with each other. If an author neglects to define the bonds within the main cast, then they just have a couple of people that they feel like need to work together, or else. Kind of like a coworker situation. Yes, this also includes villains and antagonists. This is the fundamental respected in Book 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender with Zuko. Zuko was given several one-on-one episodes with the rest of the gang so that he can form actual bonds with them. Even Toph, who didn't have her own episode but still had moments with Zuko that helped him throughout his journey to redemption. So, how does Alan Becker execute on this kind of fundamental? The show isn't afraid of isolating pairs off with each other, presenting newer dynamics on how they all act when they're with someone else in the group. This makes the group feel more grounded because you can tell that all of them are good friends and no one is left behind. How Alan Becker's team does this fundamental is connected to the other two. Because their roles and personalities are well defined on a list, you can easily put two characters together and create a plotline. This gives them avenues to mix and match the duos and trios that are on screen, but never make it feel forced. The rule of thumb that I like to follow is that when you have a large main cast, you need to be able to create a relationship chart between them that has one or more sentences describing what they've done on screen, what did they think of each other, and what kind of dynamic they represent. Let's start with Green. Green's relationship with the other four are defined as such. In the Influencer Arc's comment section, Green answers the question, "Who of the others is your favorite?" He answers this in universe. This is one of those lose-lose questions. If I say all of them, you guys get mad. If I say one of them, the other four get mad. So I'll just say red is the most exciting to hang out with, blue is the most chill, yellow is the most productive, and orange is the most sincere. and these qualities are expanded in the actual show, not just told to us. Green and Red have moments when they're each other's enablers, ensuing hijinks as a comedic duo. Blue and Green are more reliable with each other. Orange and Green share a lot more emotional scenes, especially when Green is the one that has to reassure or re-include Orange, or when Orange actively fights Green when he's being too much. Yellow and Green have the least amount of scenes together, but they still have a bond. On one hand, they're working together to create more contraptions, but on the other, they're just as chaotic and reckless because they like experimenting with what they've got. Going with the other four, let's continue the diagram. Blue may be emotional and sometimes the more risk-apprehensive of the bunch. With Yellow, he's stable and shares a lot of productivity, with most of their screen time also delegated to experimenting on random things and solving problems. Yellow is also the one to comfort Blue when Blue's stressed. With Red, however, Blue is the opposite. He's much more open to fighting and isn't afraid of getting involved in shenanigans. Orange and Blue's relationship is much more in the background of Animation vs. Minecraft, but they're built on consistent forms of support during times of stress. This is best represented, however, in Animation vs. Addiction, where Blue goes through an entire path of addiction to dependence to recovery, with Orange being his guiding support. Yellow's dynamic with Orange is as a supporting role, with the occasional thorn on his side as a perpetrator of chaos. For Red, Yellow plays two roles. When they're just having fun, Yellow drags Red along to whatever he has planned. But when the stakes get too high, Yellow is the one that chastises Red's carelessness and makes sure that he doesn't stray from the path of rational thinking. On one hand, they're really good friends. On the other hand, Red causes a spike in Orange's blood pressure. And the last one is where I think discernment becomes important. As an author, you need to master the balance of knowing when to give the spotlight to a specific character and when to feature the group. While this might seem the same as the second point, it's another angle altogether. This is what I like to call spotlight delegation. The understanding of when to focus on an individual versus when to create situations where other characters of the group are supporters of one character. This also includes knowing when to start moving the spotlight around and when to feature all of them in an equal playing field. Now, what's the difference from the second point? Well, this point is highly relevant to the type of story you want to tell and the manner of execution, like production, etc. Because sometimes, even though a story has a large main cast, an author may decide to delegate a specific character as its anchor. This isn't a bad thing, but you need to set expectations. The problem usually comes when the story's main appeal is the large main group, but the pivotal moments are delivered to only one character. And that's why I want to emphasize execution. You can't start a series emphasizing the importance of friendship, then have only one character in the end doing everything. Alan Becker's large main cast works because from the very beginning, the Color Gang were always meant to be that. A gang, which means that their characters are almost always portrayed together or in relation to each other. Following Alan Becker's formula, there are two ways to balance a large cast. First, allowing characters to be supporting assets to each other. That way, the cast feels complete, but the main plot is actually only being pushed forward by one character. Also, you get to see characters shift from their usual place in the group, which can challenge how that character is usually perceived. If a character was timid and shy most of the time, putting them in positions of executive power can make for great storytelling because it's a breath of fresh air to their interpretation. Both the good and the bad that comes with it. Alan Becker does this really well because the characters never feel threatened to one-up each other in a serious way. Most of the time, it's only for jokes or something really bad happened. Take for example Orange, or The Second Coming. In the Animator vs. Animation 4 episode, it's structured in a way that he's the main character, which would obviously put the others in the deuteragonist position. However, in Animation vs. Minecraft and other episodes where the gang is featured, Orange takes a backseat and acts as a supporting main cast character till things really hit the fan and he needs to go solo for the greater good. This is complemented by the fact that he's just someone that really likes to sleep. And this goes for the antagonists. The word support doesn't just mean supporting them literally in universe, but also by elevating the themes that already exist in the story. They're support characters to each other by being parallels, foils, or even catalysts for change. King Orange and Purple were antagonists that were parallels of each other's pasts. But their support doesn't end when they lose that villain status. Purple becomes integrated into the group as the one that's a bit more groundedly strategic. His cunning nature in the previous episodes are still there, but it's more so used for pranks because, well, he just wants to have fun at this point. Second, Alan Becker defines the value that the characters give to each other. Now, some people misconstrue this point as just making a character with outstanding qualities as valuable, but that's not true. It's the same way for how job interviews kind of go. A character can be intelligent, but if that intelligence doesn't shine to the benefit of the group, then what value is that character? Especially if the proportion of the trait doesn't match the proportion of telling me that that trait is valuable. Alan Becker's series luckily doesn't fall into the trap of telling me that a character is all this great feature here because there's no way to tell me. Again, no words. The worst thing that you can do for a main cast character is to make them feel replaceable. Now, what's the key takeaway from this video? Well, it's that main characters don't exist in a vacuum. Your main cast is supposed to feel like a main cast. Their roles need to be defined and each member needs to have a reason to be there. They don't play by the rules of supporting characters. Part of the main cast's appeal will always be the relationships they form with each other. That's why fanfictions are one of the most popular forms of earned media. People like seeing characters from different walks of life talk to each other and create new scenarios, not even necessarily in a romantic way. For me, Alan Becker's stick figures are one of the best representations of a large cast because the fundamentals need to be really strong. There's no words of affirmation or explanations that would save their characterizations. There are so many other examples out there of different kinds of large main casts that I do hold dear to my heart, but that's for another day. I'm Mouchie, and subscribe if you want to see more writing tips.